The evening air in Jerusalem was quiet, heavy, and warm. The palace that once echoed with the footsteps of warriors and the music of David's harp had become still. King David, the shepherd boy who had defeated Goliath, the poet who had sung to God under the stars, the mighty king who led Israel to greatness, was now old, weak, and nearing the end of his days. His hands trembled, his voice was soft. His body, once strong enough to slay lions, now struggled even to rise from bed. But David's mind, his spirit, his love for God remained sharp. Yet even as the king lay resting, danger brewed within the palace walls. Among David's sons was Adonijah, tall, handsome, confident, and proud. Being the oldest living son, he believed the throne belonged to him by right. He had watched his father grow weak and thought, "Now is my moment." But there was one problem. God had chosen Solomon, David's son, with Bathsheba, and David had promised that Solomon would rule after him. Adonijah refused to accept that. Quietly, secretly, he began gathering supporters, men dissatisfied, men ambitious, men loyal to him rather than to God's plan. He called for chariots and horsemen. He surrounded himself with 50 men to run ahead of him wherever he went. A show of royalty he had no authority to claim. One day, he held a massive feast outside the city. He invited powerful leaders, generals, and nobles. Sheep, cattle, and fattened calves were butchered. Musicians played, wine flowed. Adonijah stood tall with pride as the smell of cooking meat filled the air. Then, with a bold voice and lifted hands, he declared, "I am king." His followers cheered. Trumpets sounded. The men feasting with him shouted, "Long live King Adonijah!" But in all his planning and pride, he made one fatal mistake. He did not invite Nathan the prophet, Zadok the priest, Benaiah the mighty warrior, or Solomon. Nathan soon heard what happened. His heart pounded. He knew the consequences. If Adonijah took the throne, Solomon would be killed. Bathsheba might be killed. Chaos would shatter the nation David had worked decades to build. Nathan hurried to Bathsheba. "Bathsheba," he said with urgency, "Adonijah has made himself king, and David does not know. If we do nothing, you and Solomon will be in danger." Bathsheba's eyes widened with fear, but fear didn't hold her faith, did. She walked straight into the king's chamber. David lay there, wrapped in blankets, his breath shallow. She knelt beside his bed and said, "My lord, you swore by the Lord your God that Solomon would reign after you. But Adonijah has declared himself king. The whole nation waits to see what you will do." As she spoke, Nathan entered and confirmed everything. David's eyes opened. A spark of determination flickered within him. The kingdom God gave him could not fall into the hands of someone acting in pride and rebellion. With effort, David pushed himself upward. "Call Zadok, call Nathan, call Benaiah," he commanded. The room burst into motion. When his loyal men arrived, David declared, with the authority of the king he still was, "Take Solomon, place him on my own mule, and lead him to Gihon. There Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet will anoint him king over Israel. Then blow the trumpet and say, 'Long live King Solomon!'" Though frail, David's voice carried the weight of heaven's will, and so they did. Solomon, young and humble, was placed upon the king's mule, the symbol of royal authority. The procession moved through the streets. People gathered, whispering, watching. When they reached Gihon, Zadok dipped the sacred horn into oil and poured it on Solomon's head. Nathan lifted his voice. "Let the king live!" Trumpets blasted. The sound echoed over the hills. People cheered. They sang. They danced. They shouted so loudly that the Bible says the ground shook. Back at Adonijah's feast, the laughter and music suddenly stopped. "Listen," someone said. In the distance, trumpets sounded. The cheers grew louder. Jonathan, the son of the priest Abiathar, rushed into the feast, breathless. "My lord Adonijah," he said, "I bring news good for others, but not for you." Adonijah's face paled. "King David," Jonathan continued, "has made Solomon king. Zadok and Nathan anointed him. The city is rejoicing, and Solomon now sits on the royal throne." The feast fell silent. Adonijah's supporters looked at one another nervously, then slipped away. Adonijah's boldness melted into fear. Terrified, he ran to the tabernacle and seized the horns of the altar. "I will not leave," he cried, "unless Solomon swears not to kill me." Word reached Solomon. The new king considered the situation with calm wisdom. "If Adonijah proves himself loyal," he said, "not a hair of his head will fall. But if he causes trouble, he will die." Adonijah was brought before Solomon. He bowed. Solomon dismissed him, saying, "Go to your home." Mercy was given. Peace returned for a moment. Time passed, and King David felt his final hour draw near. He called Solomon to his side to speak his last words. "Be strong," David said, his voice thin yet steady. "Walk in the ways of the Lord your God. Keep his commandments. If you do this, God will bless your reign." Then David spoke of the men Solomon must watch carefully: Joab, who had shed innocent blood, and Shimei, who had cursed David in the past. David also told Solomon to show kindness to the sons of Barzillai, who had supported him during Absalom's rebellion. After giving these final instructions, David breathed his last. The nation mourned. Israel lost a warrior, poet, and king. But God had already prepared a successor. Solomon now reigned, but the threats were not gone. Adonijah returned with another plan. This time he approached Bathsheba with a seemingly harmless request to marry Abishag, the young woman who had cared for David in his old age. But everyone knew what that meant. In those days, taking a former king's concubine was a claim to the throne. When Solomon heard the request, he understood instantly. "Adonijah," he said quietly, "has spoken this word against his own life." The mercy Adonijah had been given was gone. His heart had not changed. In protecting the kingdom God entrusted to him, Solomon ordered his execution. Next came Joab. When he heard about Adonijah's fate, he fled to the altar for refuge. But unlike Adonijah, Joab's hands were stained with innocent blood. Solomon ordered justice. Joab was slain. Shimei, who had cursed David years earlier, was placed under strict house arrest. Solomon told him, "Do not leave Jerusalem. If you do, you will die." For 3 years, Shimei obeyed, but one day he left the city to chase after runaway servants. When Solomon learned of this, he kept his word. Shimei was executed. Only then was the throne secure. And so, at last, peace settled over the kingdom. Solomon, the young king chosen by God, anointed before the people, defended by justice, and guided by wisdom, sat firmly on the throne of Israel. The Bible says, "The kingdom was established in Solomon's hands." 1 Kings 2:46. The boy who once sat quietly in David's court was now king over a great nation. He would go on to build the temple, write Proverbs, gain global fame for his wisdom, and lead Israel into an age known as its golden era. But it all began with a moment of tension, of danger, of courage, when God's chosen plan rose above human pride, when a father's final command shaped the future, and when Solomon, unexpected, humble, and chosen, became king.